We start now with the biggest news of the weekend. Obviously, Jessica, that broke Friday night. The shocking death of Chadwick Boseman at the age of only 43 due to colon cancer. This was a cancer he'd been living and working with for 4 years, so predating the filming on Black Panther. That's how far back it goes. Jessica, we'll get into all this right now. And I was going to bed, ready to go to bed around 11 p.m. or so on Friday night. And, even though all science tells you should not be staring at screens right before you go to bed, of course, I took one last look at my Twitter feed before signing off. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was one of those things I looked as it was sort of happening in real time. And I actually wondered at first if his account had been hacked. Like I went straight to his account and I saw his tweet. Which is now, I believe, the most liked or retweeted tweet ever. And I honestly thought his account had been hacked. Like it was so surprising and so shocking. And we'll get into all of this and the fact of how, nobody, even people like Ryan Coogler, who directed Black Panther and worked so closely with him for such a long period of time, had no idea. And that is how I found out. I immediately texted you, and in another shocking event, I was still awake and Jessica was not on a Friday night. Because it was so late, and me, and I kind of saw the news and tried to process the news while I went to bed, but there was really no news out there at the time. I'm curious what your reaction was and what it was like for you as you, like many people, woke up Saturday morning to this news.
Yeah, well, I woke up and I had just a ton of texts from people, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" The little green bubble, it had so many, and I saw, and I just like you, I was like, wait, no, this can't be right. This is he in my mind was this young and vibrant and had this extraordinary life ahead of him. I mean, one of the most insanely talented people, had everything. There was a Black Panther 2 was in the works, and not just that, but he was such a respected actor. And if you had said is Chadwick Boseman one of the actors you'll be watching in 50 years, you would say yes, or 40 years. And it was just heartbreaking to see that news. I didn't spend, I think, like so many of us, so much of the day Saturday, really just not as much watching his other films as I know so many people did. I was watching a lot of interviews with him, and I watched his commencement speech at Howard, where he went. I watched that a couple times. I watched it once, and then I watched it with my kids. And just kept watching him as a man, as a person, as a the things that he had to say about being an actor, about being a Black man, about being, young, talented, and Black. I mean, I found that stuff. I mean, what a way too short life, but what extraordinary things he brought into this world in that too short of a life.
He was a guy who went to Howard and wanted to be a writer and director, and was working on that, and actually almost, quit acting at several points. I mean, because his first really big role was 42, which is 2013. So not until his mid 30s. He had little parts here and there before then, but yeah, super talented and just amazing. Like you look, I mean, how many people play Thurgood Marshall, Jackie Robinson, and James Brown, all in a span of like just a few years, almost one right on top of each other. Plays a Supreme Court justice, one of the major sports icons of the century, and then the Godfather of Soul.
Right. Is there an icon? Yes.
Yeah, it's like, and just the range of those characters that he played as well. He was the thing about him, and is that he was even like this is like, listen, we can talk a lot about Black Panther, and we will talk a lot about Black Panther for obvious reasons. But sometimes where you really notice a person's star power is when they're really, really good in a really, really bad movie. And like I remember watching, because I'm such a loser, I watched that movie Draft Day. Do you even remember that?
I do,
It's
yeah.
like your boy Kevin Costner, another Kevin Costner sports movie, Jessica. He's made a few of those. And Jennifer Garner, I love Jennifer Garner.
Hmm.
And it was
Doesn't always
literally
choose the
made
best
by like
projects.
it was literally made by like NFL Films. Like they literally formed a film division, which was probably the first sign that it wasn't going to be that good a movie. And it was just ludicrous, and it was about these draft dealing, deals that Kevin Costner's making as the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. And Chadwick Boseman plays, as I believe it was a running back. I think he was a touted running back, and just a really just forgettable movie. But he was so good in that, you know what I mean? And that's when you know someone's great, when he can sort of elevate the material that really is maybe not so worth elevating. So. First saw him and Jackie Robinson in that movie. It was so good in 42.
Hmm.
And watched that with the family, and he was just fantastic in that. So good that, even his widow said that watching him was like seeing her husband again. I mean, if you're playing someone like that and someone as famous as that, and then the widow tells you that she feels like it's like watching her husband who's been dead for decades, I mean, is there a bigger compliment? Probably
Yeah,
not.
I watched an interview with one of Jackie Robinson's kids also, and they said it was just like it was extraordinary to watch that. And there's so many biopics where it's like it's, yeah, they kind of captured the essence of the person, but like you don't necessarily hear that kind of full support of how someone portrayed a person. And it seemed to just be really unanimous with his portrayal of Jackie Robinson.
I mean, it's shocking that he was living with this for 4 years. We mentioned people like his director Ryan Coogler didn't even know, and all the work that he did in those 4 years. I mean, I think back, Jessica. We actually did his very first Black Panther interview was with us, with you and I,
Yeah.
right after they stepped off the stage at Hall H in 2016.
At
And I
Comic.
remember you and I talking about it, and he seemed exhausted then. And you kind of wonder, like, like I don't know the exact timing on the diagnosis in 2016 when it happened and this and that. And I remember you and I both commenting on it. Super nice, but just like seemed exhausted. And I mean, listen, Comic-Con's exhausting to begin with, right? You and I are exhausted at Comic-Con, exhausted.
Yeah.
And they had just stepped off the Hall H stage, which is just a mind bending experience as it is, when they revealed Black Panther and the cast, and the crowd went crazy, and then he walks right over to us. To go through everything that he went through on the making of these films, which, having spoken to so many people that have made these MCU movies, how rewarding but exhausting they are. And then you look at his schedule of all the stuff he was doing, and the fact that he worked through all of that it is amazing. I actually remember watching To Five Bloods, I don't know when it was, 2 months ago, say. And I remember watching him in that movie as Storm and Norman. And I actually remember thinking to myself, like, wow, Chadwick Boseman looks really thin. And like, is that for a role, or is that for like, and I still don't know. And I'm not trying to say it was because he was sick, but like, you start thinking of all these things now and everything this guy went through without making a single complaint, and without taking like time off seemingly, because he still has another Netflix movie that we still haven't even seen yet that's going to come out. And The Five Bloods just came out like this summer. It just absolutely unbelievable. You know me, I'm Mr. Man Flu. I get like the sniffles and I complain about it incessantly, just incessantly. Which makes what he accomplished all the more remarkable.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that time that we interviewed him, and about that night, and it was really late. I mean, I want to say it was at like, was it like 11 or 10 p.m.? It was late. And I remember afterward, like, was absolutely lovely and was really nice, but we were both like, God, he seems, you know, and it must have been incredibly overwhelming. As much as he had been a respected actor, he was, a star, not to the extent that he became after he was, after Black Panther came out or anything, but he was already famous, and we thought, but you know what? Even if you're famous, that's a lot to get that level of attention at Hall H, whatever. And I thought about that so much this weekend. Like, I wonder, you don't know what someone's going through, and how quickly, like, maybe I was to just think like, oh, he must be exhausted from all the flashes going off in his face and all the attention, and I wonder, did he have a diagnosis at that point? Was he in treatment at that point? And what his how much he kept inside while he was fighting this terrible disease.
Yeah, and you see now, like, and you hear stories and you see things. I mean, Josh Gad sending some of the last texts that Chadwick sent, which were all about, like, life and hope and living and
Yeah.
loving. And then you hear things about stories about how he is the one that sort of came up with how T'Challa was going to speak when he made his first appearance in Captain America: Civil War, and he thought it was important for him to have that African dialect and accent.
You should
Um,
talk more about that, because I think, to me, I found that so moving. That was something that I read a bunch of interviews and I watched a bunch of interviews about why that was important to him, and that it wasn't just like, oh, hey, let's do it this way, and everyone was like, yeah, cool, sounds good. Um, I thought that was so moving, that he felt like someone like T'Challa in this kingdom of Wakanda, he would not just what it means when people in Africa have a British accent, and when you talk about the impact of colonialism and and that's becomes the accent of power or of the empowered, and how it was so important to him. There is no way that he could live with himself if this character had either an American or a British accent. And I thought that was, like, that he thought about every detail like that, and how important it was for this character to have the power and the royalty and the dignity, of a king. And I thought that was so thoughtful and just so wise of him.
yeah, according to Ryan Coogler, he said that he wanted him to have that accent because he wanted him to have a dialect that had not been conquered by the West. And listen, maybe it's a little easier once you're sort of becoming a big celebrity to sort of voice these sort of concerns. But I went back and saw that, he was on All My Children in 2003. And this is something that really stuck with me, is that he played this character, Reggie Montgomery, and he stated later that he was fired from this role because he voiced concern to producers about the racist stereotypes in the script. And you gotta realize this is a time where he's like kind of like a semi-struggling actor. You know what I mean? Like, he's on All My Children. That's a paying job. That's great, but it's not the MCU. And it's a point where you're going to use this as many people do, use a soap opera as a stepping stone to something greater. So you don't want to get fired from that role. And yet he still felt empowered enough to voice those concerns. The role then got recast, and actually Michael B. Jordan took the role, who would end up being his co-star in Black Panther, which is also interesting. But that's sort of what sticks to me. It's 2003. This guy does not have a big resume under his belt. He's really trying to break into the industry, and yet he still feels like he can voice those concerns to producers, ultimately, which cost him his job.
Yeah, I mean, that is the subject of his Howard commencement speech that everyone should go back and watch. And just, he talks about that, how, like, when he's called in, he's like, "Hey, we love you. We want you to be around more." And here's his first, like, I don't know, six-figure paycheck, and this is great. And then he says, you know, tell me about this character. Like, where was his dad, and why is he, like, what's going on with his mom? And just that they just went immediately to a place of stereotypes and just how he spoke about it and to the powers on the show and to the producers. And it's an incredible speech. And he just talks about how important it is to speak up and to make your voice heard regardless of where you are in the industry.
I'm just going to read you a little bit of what Denai Guerrera, obviously a very accomplished Tony-nominated writer, herself read. And then, Jessica, if there's anything else you want to add from other people that have sort of weighed in with, tributes and comments and what have you, either coworkers or other folks. Denai wrote, "How do you honor a king? Reeling from the loss of my colleague, my friend, my brother, struggling for words. Nothing feels adequate. I always marveled at how special Chadwick was. Such a pure-hearted, profoundly genius, regal, fun guy. My entire job as a Okoye was to respect and protect a king, honor his leadership. Chadwick made that job profoundly easy. He was the epitome of kindness, elegance, diligence, and grace. On many occasions, I would think how thankful I was that he was the leading man I was working closely with, a true class act and so perfectly equipped to take on the responsibility of leading the franchise that changed everything for Black representation. He made everyone feel loved, heard, and seen. He played great iconic roles because he possessed inside of himself that connection to greatness to be able to so richly bring them to life. He had a heroic spirit and marched to the beat of his own drum. Hence his excellence as an artist and the incredible courage and determination as he faced life's challenges while still guiding us all. He was zen and sweet and funny with the very best laugh, attentive and truly, truly good. I can't even wrap my mind around this loss, a loss resonating in my own heart as well as around the globe. The children he inspired, my heart aches for them to lose their hero just as they finally found him. I'm so thankful to have taken the Black Panther journey with him, to have known him, spent time in his light and leadership, and to call him forever a friend." And then she finished the post in Zulu, which translates to "Sleep in peace, O King." So pretty moving stuff there from Denai.
Yeah, I read so many tributes to him, everyone he worked with. And I watched the special on ABC last night. They did a tribute to him and they screened Black Panther as well. And it was just EW did a special tribute issue. And I just thought one of the lines that our friend Leah Greenblatt wrote, I thought was lovely. She said he exuded a kind of innate elegance and emotional intelligence, a quiet force that consistently compelled the story to rise up to meet him. And when I think about Black Panther and what that, there are so many ways that movie is compelling and wonderful, and there's a reason why it was the success that it was. There's no surprise, but even within that, I love what Leah wrote there because there was something even especially regal about his performance that you kind of feel like, how sometimes you watch a film and you think, no one else could have played this role. And that's, you kind of walked away from that movie and even the other ones that he was in. And you're like, oh yeah, he's the one. They cast that right. There was something that you couldn't necessarily put your finger on. Maybe like Denai said, he was warm and he was serious and he was zen and he was regal, and there was just something about him that even within this property that was so set up for success, he somehow managed to elevate it that much more.
Obviously, Ryan Coogler's working on Black Panther 2. Obviously, whatever he was working on, I'm assuming, is vastly going to change, and the question becomes what they will do with Black Panther 2. The thing to remember here is, listen, no one else is going to play T'Challa. I think we're all assuming that, at least. You can't.
No one
else
should.
Do that.
I really, really can't imagine they would recast.
But But that does not mean you cannot have another Black Panther, Jessica. As we know in the superhero universe, you have, as we've seen with Spider-Man recently with Miles Morales and things, and there's several, as we just saw with Avengers and Captain America passes over the shield to a new Captain America. This can happen in the superhero universe where you can have someone still as that superhero, but not that same character. Is it Shuri? Is it someone else? These are the things that can happen that I think that people would want to happen. And I think there's a way that you can honor Chadwick Boseman in a Black Panther 2 and where it's not going to seem like a Disney money grab. I feel like they can do that. I feel people ultimately will want that. And you can honor him while not replacing him at all.
Yes, I totally agree. I heard a lot of people talking about, what a great, how powerful and what a wonderful homage. Even to Chadwick it would be to say like we are not going to you. There is no other T'Challa, but yes, how Shuri, how his sister, and just how meaningful that would be for and he'll always be the the father of that franchise. He'll always be it's just so sad. It's so sad when you think about all the roles he might have had and just the life that he might have. Sad for us that we didn't get to see it, but for him, for his family, for his wife, he just this life that he might have had ahead of him. It's
Yep.
devastating.
A devastating loss. And, obviously, what we can all do, what a lot of people have already been doing over the weekend, is go back and watch the fine work that he had. Lots of these movies and films are readily available. Like I said, you can watch his most recent work to come out, Defy Bloods, which is on Netflix right now. And he'll have another Netflix movie coming out shortly as well. So we still have more Chadwick Boseman to enjoy.
Yeah, I would say one other thing I want to give, because it was one of the clips that was making the rounds when our friend Sway interviewed him at SiriusXM and he interviewed a few cast from Black Panther. And it's a very moving moment. I mean, Chadwick, and I think a lot of people spoke about this, how he was doing a lot of work kind of quietly with kids who were sick, some, cancer patients, terminal, whatever. And he talks about that for a minute in this clip of a town hall that Sway moderated at SiriusXM, and he's at one point he says like that there were moments where he thought like, what is this movie actually going to be that important that a kid is going to want to stay alive long enough to see it? And he ultimately breaks down crying, and he has a hard time kind of composing himself. And at that point, for sure, he had the diagnosis. This was, the movie was out, whatever. And it's such a beautiful moment. And it's such a moment of realization of how big and how impactful the movie was and his role in particular was to just to a generation and just what that would mean for a sick child. I found that incredibly moving. I would encourage everyone to go back and watch that. And even watching, I know a lot of people were watching the stuff on Fallon when he was kind of surprising people and coming out and giving them a hug after they said how important Black Panther was to them. Like there was a real acknowledgement of what that film meant to people and a joy that he continued to get from that even after the checks are cashed and the premieres are over and all that and I love that.